Raslan's shooting. In 2021, during the Ramadan season, Irani TV broadcast two prank programs called Tony's Bullet and Raslan's Shooting. The whole idea here was to scare celebrity guests by pretending they were getting kidnapped by staged militant attacks, which already sounds very wrong, but the reality was way worse. First, celebrities like Nesma Taneb and Iraqi actress Ala Mawi, an Iraqi international baller, and a couple of other athletes were invited to attend a charity event, but it was all a lie. Instead, they were kidnapped, blindfolded, and strapped with a bomb vest. It was an ambush complete with fake explosions, simulated gunfire, and interrogation scenes straight from an ISIS playbook. What makes this extremely tone-deaf prank even more horrifying is how badly the celebrities reacted. Nesma Taneb literally fainted on TV from the sheer horror, while Ala Mawi cried and begged because he was completely convinced that they had been kidnapped by actual militants. Aside from the physical and obvious psychological trauma those kidnapped celebrities experienced, the show still faced intense backlash from the public after it was aired, especially given the fact that Iran already had a painful history of real terrorist violence. Thankfully, Iranian regulatory authorities suspended the show on the basis that they were violating broadcast rules and was very insensitive toward the real situation currently being faced in Iraq. Clone High, 2002 to 2003, offensive depiction. If there's an award for a show that was completely tone-deaf and very inaccurate, then Clone High would definitely take the prize home. This is because in 2002 to 2003, MTV released an animated series called Clone High. The plot to this was to clone historical figures like Abraham Lincoln, Joan of Arc, Gandhi, and JFK as moody, troublesome American teenagers, all in high school together. Sounds fun and ridiculous until everything gets more absurd. Things get worse when the show starts to twist real-world cultures and sensitive topics. It all becomes jokes and comedy, which a lot of people didn't find funny, especially because it was depicting real heroes from other cultures. The most talked about controversy was the depiction of Gandhi. In Clone High, Gandhi's character was shown to be this impulsive, hyperactive party boy who didn't care for anything except fun.
CCAD, boop, I'm done.
Do you mind? We're taking a test.
Gandhi, at one point, was even shown kissing a man. While the producers intended for it to be satire and fun, India didn't find it funny at all. First of all, Gandhi was a revered symbol of peace and national identity, and the portrayal felt like an insult.
We're taking a test.
Gandhi, just try and sit still until everyone is finished.
Not a problem, Mr. Sheepman.
Thousands of citizens came out in outrage to protest the blatant disrespect. They even went as far as taking a hunger strike outside MTV India's headquarters. Then the show gets even more uncomfortable because they heavily lean into harmful habits, making dark humor about mental health, self-harm, eating disorders, and even inappropriate coercion. Joan of Arc is portrayed as a desperate and depressed teen who is hungry for Lincoln's affection. JFK is basically the embodiment of toxic masculinity, while Lincoln is depicted as indecisive and socially awkward. The show received so much backlash and things got so intense that MTV had to cancel and pull the show completely. They didn't even get to producing a second season. Clone High was literally canceled by global diplomacy. Workaholics, to Friend a Predator episode. Workaholics is an American comedy show that aired from 2011 to 2017. The three main characters, Adam, Blake, and Anders, were basically depicted as overgrown children navigating life after college. Well, in Season 1, Episode 6, which is the Friend of the Predator episode, the two meet a lonely man named Jerry at trivia night. Jerry appears harmless, shy, awkward, and quiet. He's into video games, memes, and just looking for friends. The trio hit it off quickly. But then there's a twist. We find out that Jerry is actually a registered offender. In fact, he was actively caught trying to meet a minor online. Now, you'd expect that most people would cut contact and turn him into the authorities, right? Instead, these guys remain friends with him. They even go as far as attempting a makeover to make him more normal and acceptable to society. They set him up on a date with an adult woman, as if that somehow erases everything he's done in the past. This is exactly what makes this episode so disturbing. They take something extremely serious and turn it into a joke. It makes light of a real-world crime that destroys lives and presents the predator as someone who just needs a little social help. The episode ends with Jerry accidentally ending up on the offender list again, and once again, it's all played for jokes and laughs, even though nothing about it feels funny. Years later, in real life, accusations of misconduct started surfacing about the man who played Jerry. Yep.
A manager, who asked to remain anonymous, recalled how the 40-year-old comedian allegedly appeared naked at his hotel room door after calling for assistance with his air conditioner.
Multiple people accused him of inappropriate acts, and even though he denied the allegations, it still added a disturbing layer of reality to a character who was already playing a predator on screen. If you want to see more disturbing TV shows like these, then you should definitely subscribe. Let's dive into the next segment. Hawaii Five-0. Season 2, Episode 16 of Hawaii Five-0 follows a woman who does a form of yoga that basically mimics simulated hanging, and we're not talking about the downward dog kind of yoga. She ties a rope to the ceiling and loops it around her neck, but instead of completely letting go, she uses her body strength to support her weight. It was called hanging for meditation. But then things take an alarming turn when she's found dead in her apartment. While the detectives initially suspected foul play, investigators later showed that her death may have been a tragic accident during her yoga routine. However, things take a twisted and dark turn after the episode aired. A real person tried to replicate the same yoga hanging technique and, well, he hung himself to death. The event sparked intense conversations about the internet as viewers pointed out how the show portrayed the episode with almost no warning or context on what to expect. After the tragic death, CBS freaked out big time and pulled the episode immediately. It has never been re-aired, released officially, or even included in box sets. It's like the episode was never even produced. Joy Junction. When the show Joy Junction first aired in the 90s, it looked like the regular cheesy kids Christian puppet show. There were low-budget puppets, colorful backdrops, and highly enthusiastic Sunday school messages, all directed and produced by Ronald Brown. He was also the show's host and was the epitome of a church-going and upright man. However, beneath all this easygoing humor and Christian lifestyle was a man with a very, very disturbing and terrible secret. In 2012, he was arrested by the FBI after they found out that he was part of a predator network. He wasn't even just trafficking. This man, whose entire career revolved around children, was also discussing detailed fantasies involving the harming, kidnapping, and killing of them. In fact, in some of the chats they found, he specifically talked about participants from his own church.
Even though he made a number of references to a specific boy he knows through his church. Tonight, Brown is being held in custody, and the other man taking part in those online conversations, he is in jail as well in Kansas.
It actually gets worse, because the FBI also uncovered messages where Brown and other predators traded tips on how to commit these heinous acts. Yes, it was a horrible, disgusting mix of inappropriate and disgusting fantasies. He told other members there how to properly gain a child's trust, avoid detection, and use methods for disposal. Brown even described hypothetical scenarios where he'd invite boys over from church or his neighborhood for something he called a pizza party, which the police later found was a code word for something more sinister. However, authorities didn't find any evidence of direct involvement, but the sheer amount of details in his chat and messages was enough to send him to jail. He was charged in 2013 and sentenced to 20 years, which was the maximum allowed for his charges. He also had to register as an offender for life. Haven, reunion episode. On December 14th, 2012, a supernatural drama known as Haven had an episode completely removed from the air because it crossed into truly disturbing territories. The episode featured a high school reunion where some supernatural powers turned several alumni into their teenage selves and then them off in very twisted ways. An ex-student, Robbie, was pulling the strings and systematically kicking off all the bullies who made his life miserable in high school. One guy gets his head smashed in by a fire extinguisher, while another gets melted to death with hot grease. Now, these kind of stories are not exactly new for this show, but on the day it was supposed to air, the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting occurred. This school shooting was one of the deadliest to ever happen in U.S. history, and it claimed the lives of 20 children and 6 adults. It was a horrible, devastating incident that shook the whole country. So, out of respect, Haven decided to postpone the episode, especially because the storyline was centered around high school revenge, violence, and bullying. The reunion episode is so traumatic because it hits too close to home and shows the fear and chaos of a school under attack. It did eventually air a month later, but is now forever tied to a day of national loss. Australia's Naughtiest Home Videos, 1992. In 1992, Channel 9, an Australian TV network, produced and released a one-off special called Australia's Naughtiest Home Videos. The show was hosted by Jock Doug Mulray, and the entire idea was to take wholesome, funny home clips but make them X-rated. You literally see semi-naked people and animals videoed in awkward, suggestive positions, all accompanied by extremely uncomfortable jokes. It wasn't just lewd humor, it was dirty and unhinged. What's worse, it was aired for families as comedic jokes. The network chairman, Kerry Packer, literally had to cut the entire thing mid-broadcast. He was apparently watching it at home, completely horrified, so he called the control room screaming, "Get that shit off the air!" The screen went black for a few minutes, and viewers were suddenly watching reruns of Cheers with no explanations. The show was so tasteless and offensive, not only because of the content, but also because of how degrading it was to the women. It was so bad, it was literally canceled and banned mid-air. To Catch a Predator. To Catch a Predator was a show that did exactly what the name says. It tracked and caught predators, and on paper, that sounds like an amazing thing, right? Well, it was until it wasn't. So basically, an adult pretending to be a younger teen would go online and try to lure people suspected of being predators. The plot was simple: get them to engage, arrive at a meetup point, and then get busted. Prior to the bust, hidden cameras would be set up everywhere to catch the predator red-handed by Chris Hansen, the host. He would then hit them with all the evidence, chat logs, and extreme judgment for who they were. Most times, the police would be outside waiting for them. However, instead of bringing comfort and safety, the show was just really messy and disturbing. It started to look more like entertainment than justice. Grown men were shown happily walking into houses with pizzas and alcohol, all with the intent of fully meeting a minor. It just felt really dirty and gross. Then, in 2006, it became even worse. One of the predators, Louis Conrad, who was an assistant district attorney, was targeted after he fell into the trap. However, when he didn't show up at the agreed location, the show's producers took the cameras to his house along with the SWAT team. But before they could show him getting arrested on camera, the man pulled out a gun and took his own life. After this incident, everything started to fall apart and go downhill. Critics claimed that the show focused more on shock value and views rather than actual crime prevention. Soon after, NBC quietly pulled the show from its channel. Ghost Watch. Ghost Watch was a British TV special that aired on Halloween night 1992 on the BBC.
On Saturday night, we'll be visiting the most haunted house in Britain. But will the ghosts be there? Can you take it?
Ghost Watch, a Screen One special for Halloween, Saturday at 9:25 on One.
It was presented by trusted BBC host Michael Parkinson and Sarah Green, and the whole idea was to investigate haunted houses on real-life TV. The story followed a family in North London who claimed their home was being haunted by ghosts. especially one ghost named Pipes because he was always making strange noises in the pipes. The broadcast got even more disturbing after viewers at home were encouraged to phone in their own ghost stories. This all added to the realism of the entire program. The only problem here was it was all completely scripted, but the viewers at home had absolutely no idea. So they were watching a completely scripted show all while believing it was a real-time horror scene happening. The network even added details like a shadowy figure in a reflection or standing in a corner to make it even more believable. Sometimes there'd be an equipment malfunction, random possessions, and paranormal attacks that made viewers think they were watching a real-life situation that was growing worse. And well, people freaked out. Thousands of viewers phoned the BBC, terrified and scared that the show was unleashing real evil. Some even claimed the show was causing actual supernatural events in their homes. There were even reports of psychological trauma. One teenager with learning disabilities tragically killed himself because he believed the show unleashed evil. Eventually, people found out the entire thing had actually been fiction and, well, all hell broke loose. The backlash was so intense that the BBC had to ban Ghostwatch for over a decade. Mr. Rogers' Conflict Episode. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was a children's show about puppets, comedy, and cardigans. It was a feel-good TV show for kids, but in 1983, Fred Rogers, the show's host, decided to do a series of episodes that was entirely unhinged and disturbing. He created a series of episodes that were about nuclear war, and remember, this was a children's show. The storyline shows one of the puppet characters, King Friday, hearing that another kingdom is building something mysterious. So, in classic fashion, King Friday panics and starts to stockpile weapons and bombs, which spread fear throughout his kingdom. Then the next kingdom hears this, starts to spiral, and builds their own weapons, and just like that, the whole world is in panic and worried that there's a war looming. The entire episode is literally mirroring the effect of the Cold War, but everything is being acted out by puppets. Now, according to Rogers, the show was meant to help children process the terrifying concepts of war. He wanted them to understand that misunderstandings, panic, and irrational fear can lead to terrible decisions that might end up hurting people forever. However, the whole play acting was way too real, especially since children were his target audience. They were being exposed to talks about bombs, war, and mistrust on a very large scale. PBS had to later pull the conflict episode from reruns because of its unsettling nature. It then disappeared for decades and was known for a really long time as the Lost Episodes. If you enjoyed watching this and want to see more videos like these, then you should check out our video on the most disturbing documentaries.